Hi, I'm Aron Leaman. Welcome to my studio, Mill City Glassworks, here in Lowell, Massachusetts. I'm going to be taking you through the process of creating one of my blown glass bird sculptures. I hope you enjoy it. So I've been blowing glass for 20 years now, and throughout that process, I've probably done or made most things, professionally for a job or an order or something like that, where it's either paperweights, cups, bowls, but really my passion is making sculpture. And that's what I want to do. And now when I'm sitting in the studio or have the chance to come in and work with an assistant, that's what I'm making and that's what my focus is. And that's the direction that it's gone in over the last few years. And I'm very happy with that. And it's made glass blowing for me. I'm able to create the sculptures that I want to create. And it's less about creating the same form over and over. And it's more about creating something that's unique and has personality and character. Creating a living form like a bird, it's really nice to see the piece almost come to life as you're making it. Myself as a sculptor in process, I see it, I'm seeing it almost from the beginning. I have all those layers of color. I have everything. I'm looking at a bubble and I'm already seeing how I'm gonna sculpt that in. I'm looking at it, I'm looking at how the color lines are gonna match up with where, the neck is gonna stretch out, and all those things are thought through ahead of time. And when you're watching that, it's almost nice to see that come to life. And I like to see, when someone realizes what you're making. Oh, it's a bird. Oh, it's a figure. And as that's diving in and out of the glory hole, it's kind of pretty awesome. So a lot of my work, the inspiration comes from place, whether it's somewhere where I've traveled, where I grew up, where I am at the time. And the imagery that I try to show isn't literal. I don't want to put like a photograph or something on the work, but I want to convey a feeling, and that feeling of what I feel when I'm there, or pick out something like the current moving or how the sand lines looked at that time, and use that as inspiration for how I color my work. So one of those inspirations from place really comes from a place called the Narrows, or that's where there's an island and this peninsula meet off the Essex Bay. And that's a place where I used to cut through in a kayak, and you get swept by the currents, or you have to give it a gas if you're in a boat. And that area, there's a Native American population that summered there and summered on that island. And the idea of wampum and me finding those shells there kind of came together into a color pattern. So where I have purple lines with these purple shell-like patterns on there, and the lines are creating a current. So that's one example how I take place and feelings from, growing up or even currently, and translate it into how I work with color. So the use of shards of glass color that I pre-make and add to my work has been present since the beginning, essentially. So again, I'm interested in those more abstract patterns and how to get those. So it's not necessarily I take a bar of color and use it straight. I'm taking it, layering it, blowing it, smashing it, and then using those pieces. I find it a way to create more of an abstract pattern, something that you haven't necessarily seen. A lot of it sort of looks like paint, which I'm okay with, but it is all done with glass patterning and in the process when it is hot. So with the bird form, what I find really important when I focus on is those little details, like blowing that head out just enough or pulling that beak. Sometimes I get very obsessive over those things, where it can be a half an hour with fiddling with straightening a beak or getting it just right. And I get better at it over time, but you still, you look at those things and you can just work on it forever. So it's important to me to have those little details, and I think that's what creates really nice work, is attention to detail. So the process of creating one of these birds is pretty time-consuming in terms of glass. It takes multiple hours. There's a lot of color prep. In each piece, there's a lot of refinement and detail work. So the process that I'm showing is from start to finish. I'm going to be adding color in different ways. I'm using shards of glass color that I pre-make and I break up and I pick up. I'm going to be doing a wrap of color around the piece that I manipulate. So I do enjoy pattern work, but I personally really like the random patterns that are created by glass and the movement of heat and how it's put on. So I tend to manipulate the color after I put it on. Instead of leaving it like a clean spiral or something like that, I like to change it a bit. And then as I'm creating the form, it's gonna stretch out as well. So if you think about a bowl is a round form. That's really just gonna kind of stay with the shape, you know, and you're gonna be able to see that pattern that you set up, it'll stretch. But on the bird form, it's gonna stretch and get it elongated, and different things are gonna change within the piece. So something that I've been playing with lately, so I'm putting a base pattern down and then I'm actually covering that pattern with color. So it almost seems counterintuitive in process. I do all this work to create this pretty line pattern, but then I just cover it up. But I've been playing with revealing that pattern through work in what we would call cold working. So I'm removing material and exposing more pattern underneath. And this is something that I do plan on experimenting more and playing with. So I really do enjoy planning these pieces out and finding inspiration. So like my latest creation that I completed is entitled Sandbars on an Outgoing Tide. So, you know, the imagery comes from, you know, the tide coming out and revealing these sandbars, and almost like aerial photography and looking at that. So that's what I'm trying to portray. I like that to be open to interpretation as well. So I don't want someone to look at something and, you know, only see what I see. I want someone to create their own thought based around it. And that's why I really do love the more abstract patterning and creating imagery and letting one's mind sort of wander and create their own feeling. Here's one of the pieces that was created. You can see how that color changes. So when it's hot, this was more like a dark green. Really that turquoise pops in these blue shards. So this is one that I'm gonna now carve. So I'll either do it with a lathe, a Dremel, or a sandblaster, all three. And I'll go through here, and I think the idea is gonna be to carve almost like rivers through these shards. So you can see the patterns that are created in here. And underneath here, there's all this line work. So as I remove this layer, we're gonna expose that line work down below. And so the idea is, again, sort of current lines. So here's another piece that was created. And this is when I was talking about the wampum shore pieces. This is one with that imagery. So we have almost like the wampum coloration in here, and my thought is this is almost as the shore. And then these are those current lines, you know, those strong currents coming through. This one I'm not gonna carve at all. I really like having that distinction between the two there. I'm quite happy with it. So when I started blowing glass, I immediately was drawn to it as a material. It's something that you can't touch, but you want to. Something that is manipulated easily, but is also very hard to make it do what you want. And I saw that as a true challenge. And once you try it, you want to do it more and you want to get better at it. And that same thing is happening 20 years later, where, you know, I want to make the piece again. I still get really excited when I'm blowing glass. I still get excited to come in and open the annealer up and see what I made the next day. You know, there's obviously the other side of that when something smashes to the floor or, you know, you just botch it. It's just very challenging, and It's something that will forever be rewarding. And I'm growing every day still when I make glasswork.